The loudest sound in the crowded restaurant wasn't the clinking of expensive wine glasses or the jazz band playing in the corner. It was the cruel, barking laugh of a man looking at his ex-girlfriend's waistline. "You got fat, Tessa. Seriously, look at you." He thought he was humiliated, a waitress. He thought he was untouchable. What Derek Salinger didn't know was that the extra weight wasn't from overeating. It was a secret heir. And the father wasn't just any man. He was the silent predator sitting 3 tables away, watching every move and waiting for the perfect moment to burn Derek's world to the ground. This is the story of how a single insult started a war. The dinner rush at Leone's bistro was always a battlefield, but tonight the air felt heavier than usual. Outside, the Chicago wind howled against the glass panes, rattling the frames of the high-end establishment on the corner of State Street. Inside, Tessa Reynolds adjusted her apron, wincing as the waistband dug into her skin. She was 4 months along, just enough to show if you knew where to look, but easy enough to hide under the loose-fitting black uniform the management required. Her ankles were swollen, her back throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, and her heart was a fragile bird beating against her ribs. "Table 4 needs a refill on the Pinot." Tiffany, a fellow server with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, hissed as she breezed past. "And try to look less like you're attending a funeral, Tessa. It's bad for tips." Tessa nodded, brushing a stray lock of chestnut hair from her forehead. She grabbed the water pitcher, forcing a smile onto her face. She needed this job. She needed the tips. The envelope of cash hidden under her mattress in her studio apartment on the south side wasn't nearly thick enough yet. Not for what was coming. She moved toward table 4, her eyes lowered. "Well, well. Look who's serving us tonight." The voice hit her like a bucket of ice water. Tessa froze, the water pitcher trembling slightly in her hand. She knew that voice. It was the voice that had promised to love her 2 years ago, and the same voice that had told her she was too boring and lacking ambition when he walked out 6 months ago. Derek Salinger. Tessa slowly lifted her eyes. Derek was sitting there, looking smug in a suit that cost more than her car. Next to him was a woman who looked like she had been generated by an AI. Perfect blonde hair, vacant smile, and a diamond tennis bracelet that caught the dim lighting. "Derek," Tessa said, her voice steady despite the nausea rising in her throat. "I didn't know you frequented Leone's." "Just celebrating a promotion," Derek said, leaning back and spreading his arms, taking up as much space as possible. "Senior VP of Sales at Vanguard Logistics. Big things, Tessa. Big things." He looked her up and down. His eyes didn't linger on her face. They dropped to her midsection. The uniform was loose, but the way she leaned against the table to relieve the pressure on her back pressed the fabric against her stomach. A small, undeniable curve. Derek laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "Wow," he scoffed, shaking his head. "I guess the breakup diet didn't work out, huh? You got fat, Tessa. Seriously, look at you." The blonde woman giggled, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. "Derek, stop. That's mean," she said, though her eyes were dancing with amusement. "I'm just being honest," Derek said, raising his voice so the tables nearby could hear. "You used to be so tight, Tess. Now, you look like you've been eating your feelings. It's a little sad, honestly. Waiting tables and letting yourself go." Tessa felt the blood drain from her face. The heat of humiliation rose up her neck. She could feel the eyes of other patrons on her. "Can I get you some water?" she whispered, just wanting to escape. "No, I think I want a different server," Derek sneered. "One who doesn't look like she's about to pass out from walking 10 feet. Go get the manager. I want someone." fresher. Tessa gripped the pitcher until her knuckles turned white. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him that the fat was his punishment and her blessing, a secret she was guarding with her life. But she couldn't. Right away, she managed to choke out. She turned on her heel, blinking back tears. She walked fast, head down, toward the kitchen. She didn't see the man at table 9. Table 9 was the best seat in the house, secluded, dark, with a full view of the room. The man sitting there hadn't touched his food. He was dressed in a charcoal suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone to reveal a glimpse of a tattoo on his collarbone. He was nursing a whiskey, neat. Dominic Nico Valenti didn't blink. He sat with the stillness of a viper. Behind him, his bodyguard, a giant of a man named Luca, shifted uncomfortably. "Boss," Luca rumbled low. "Do you want me to handle it?" Nico's eyes were locked on Tessa's retreating figure, watching the way her hand protectively hovered over her stomach. Then, his gaze shifted to Derek Salinger. The look in Nico's eyes wasn't anger. It was something far worse. It was calculation. "Not yet," Nico said, his voice like grinding stones. "I want to see what she does. And then, I want to know everything about that man. Where he works, where he sleeps, and who insures his teeth." The kitchen was a chaotic symphony of shouting chefs and clattering pans, but for Tessa it was a sanctuary. She leaned against the stainless steel prep table, taking deep, shuddering breaths. "Don't cry. Do not cry." She placed a hand on her belly. "I'm sorry, little one," she whispered. "He's an idiot. We don't need him." But she needed money. She needed safety. And right now, she had neither. Her mind flashed back to 4 months ago. It was supposed to be a one-night rebellion. After Derek had left her, Tessa had felt hollow. Her friend Chloe had dragged her to a private gala at the Drake Hotel. Tessa didn't belong there, surrounded by old money and dangerous new money. But she had met him. Nico. He hadn't told her his last name. He hadn't told her what he did. He had just been magnetic, intense. He listened to her when she spoke about her dreams of opening a bakery, not with the condescending nod Derek used to give, but with genuine focus. They had spent the night in his penthouse suite. It was a night of passion that terrified her with its intensity, but in the morning she had woken up to the sound of hushed, urgent voices in the living room. "The Moretti family is moving on the shipments. If they find out you're here, Dominic." She had heard enough. Moretti. Shipments. Dominic. She realized she wasn't just sleeping with a wealthy businessman. She was sleeping with a warlord. Panic had set in. She fled while he was in the shower, leaving no note, changing her number the next day. She thought she had escaped that world. She was wrong. "Tessa!" The manager, a sweaty, balding man named Gary, snapped his fingers in front of her face, bringing her back to the harsh fluorescent lights of the kitchen. "Table 4 is complaining. They said you were rude and unhygienic. Is that true?" "What?" "No." Tessa straightened up. "Gary, that's my ex-boyfriend. He's harassing me. He called me fat in front of half the restaurant." Gary sighed, wiping his forehead with a napkin. He didn't care about truth. He cared about Yelp reviews. "Look, the guy is ordering the 1998 Cabernet. He's a spender. Just stay away from that table. Tiffany will take it. And Tessa, suck it in, yeah? The uniform looks sloppy." Tessa felt a crack in her heart. "I'm pregnant, Gary." The silence in the kitchen lasted 2 seconds before Gary rolled his eyes. "Great, just great. Look, we can talk about your employment status later. Right now, get back on the floor. Table 9 needs water." Table 9? The VIP table. Tessa wiped her eyes, grabbed a fresh pitcher, and walked back out. She kept her gaze averted from table 4, where she could hear Derek's boisterous laughter. She approached table 9. "Water for the table, sir?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you, Tessa." The sound of her name, spoken in that deep, gravelly baritone, made her blood freeze. She knew that voice. She would know it in a hurricane. She looked up. Nico was watching her. He looked different than he had at the gala. Harder, colder. But the way he looked at her, it was possessive. "Nico," she breathed, the pitcher slipping slightly in her damp palm. "You left early," he said, ignoring the water she was pouring. "I don't like waking up alone." I had to work," she lied, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she feared he could see it. "You ran," he corrected. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit." "I can't. I'm working. My manager. I don't care about your manager. Sit." It wasn't a request. Tessa glanced at Derek's table, then at Gary, watching from the podium, and finally at Nico. She sat. "You look tired," Nico observed, his eyes scanning her face, looking for bruises, looking for fear. Then his gaze dropped. He looked at her stomach. Tessa instinctively crossed her arms over her midsection. "I've been eating my feelings," she said, parroting Derek's insult, trying to deflect. Nico's eyes narrowed. He reached across the table. His hand was large, scarred at the knuckles, but his touch was gentle as he took her hand. "Who was the man who spoke to you?" "Nobody," Tessa said quickly. "Just an ex." "He made you cry?" "He's a jerk. It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," Nico said softly. He turned his head slightly toward Luca, the bodyguard. "Luca, find out which car belongs to the gentleman at table 4. "Nico, no!" Tessa hissed, gripping his hand. "Please, I just want to do my shift and go home. Don't cause a scene. I can't lose this job." Nico looked at her, and for a second, the mask of the Mafia Don slipped, revealing the man beneath. "You think I would let you lose anything?" Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the restaurant. At table 4, Derek had stood up, knocking his wine glass over. He was drunk, and he was angry that Tessa was sitting with another customer instead of serving. "Hey!" Derek shouted, pointing a finger at Tessa. "Is this what this place is? The waitresses sit down and chat up the rich guys while the paying customers wait? Hey, manager, get over here!" Tessa closed her eyes. It was over. Gary, the manager, scurried over to Derek's table like a frightened rat. "Sir, I'm so sorry," Gary stammered. She's having a bad night. I'll handle it." "Handle it?" Derek slurred, his face flushed red. "I want her fired, right now. She's incompetent, she's rude, and frankly, she's an eyesore. Look at her." He gestured wildly toward where Tessa sat with Nico. "She's waddling around here like a duck. Get her out of here, or I'm writing a review that will shut this dump down." Gary turned to Tessa, his face purple with rage. He marched over to table 9. "Tessa, get up!" Gary barked, ignoring Nico completely. "You are done. Clock out. Get your things. You're fired." Tessa felt the tears spill over. She stood up, her legs shaking. "Gary, please, I have rent." "Not my problem. Out!" Derek, watching from his table, started to slow clap. "Finally, justice is served. Bye-bye, Tessie." Tessa turned to leave, humiliation burning her skin like acid. "Sit down, Tessa." The voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a judge's gavel. Nico hadn't moved. He was still sipping his whiskey. Gary blinked, looking down at Nico. "Excuse me, sir. This is an employee matter. Please don't interfere." Nico slowly set his glass down. He reached into his inner jacket pocket. Luca, the bodyguard, stood up. He was 6'5" and blocked the light, casting a shadow over Gary. Nico pulled out a sleek, black titanium card, and a fountain pen. He picked up the receipt from the table, flipped it over, and wrote a number on it. A very long number. "Gary, is it?" Nico asked. Yes," the manager stammered, intimidated by Luca's sheer size. "Who owns this establishment? Is it still the Rossi Hospitality Group?" Gary's eyes widened. "Yes, Mr. Rossi owns it." "Good. I know Marco Rossi. He owes me a favor regarding a union dispute at the docks last winter." Nico stood up, buttoning his jacket. He towered over the manager. "I am buying this restaurant, Gary." The bistro went silent. Even Derek stopped laughing. What?" Gary whispered. "I am buying the restaurant," Nico repeated calmly. "Effective immediately, which means, Gary, that you work for me." Nico turned to Tessa, whose mouth was slightly open. He reached out and gently untied her apron. "And you," he said softly to her, "are finished waiting tables." Nico turned his cold, dead stare back to Gary. "Now, as the new owner, I have my first instruction. The man at table 4 is trespassing. Remove him." Gary looked at Nico, then at the terrified look on Luca's face, and realized this wasn't a joke. This was power, real, terrifying power. "Yes, sir," Gary squeaked. He turned to table 4. "Sir, you need to leave." Derek's jaw dropped. "Are you kidding me? You're listening to this guy? Who the hell is he?" Derek stormed over, fueled by liquid courage and stupidity. He walked right up to Nico. "Hey, buddy, you think you can just flash some cash and impress my ex? She's damaged goods, man. You're wasting your money on her." Derek poked Nico in the chest. It happened in a blur. 1 second Derek was standing. The next, he was on his knees, his arm twisted behind his back at an unnatural angle by Luca. Derek screamed in pain. Nico leaned down, his face inches from Derek's. "You said she got fat," Nico whispered, his voice like silk over a razor blade. Derek whimpered, sweat pouring down his face. It was a joke." "She is glowing," Nico corrected. "And if you ever speak to her again, or even look at her, I will have you dismantled. Do you understand?" "Yes. Yes." "Throw him out," Nico ordered. Luca dragged Derek toward the exit like a bag of trash. Derek's date, the blonde woman, scrambled to grab her purse and ran out after him without looking back. The restaurant was dead silent. Nico turned to Tessa. He saw the shock in her eyes, but he also saw the exhaustion. "Come," Nico said, offering his arm. "My car is outside." "I can't just leave," Tessa whispered, though she took his arm. "My tips." "Tessa," Nico said, leading her toward the door, past the stunned staff and diners. "We need to talk. I did the math. The timeline." He stopped at the door, the cold wind blowing in. He looked down at her stomach, and this time there was no hiding it. "Is it mine?" he asked. Tessa looked into the eyes of the most dangerous man in Chicago. She could lie, she could run, but she was tired of running. "Yes," she whispered. Nico didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He simply nodded, a look of fierce, terrifying determination settling on his face. He placed a hand on the small of her back. "Then God help anyone who tries to touch you," he said. The interior of the armored SUV was quiet, a stark contrast to the howling wind off Lake Michigan. The leather seats smelled of cedar and expensive cologne. Nico's scent. Tessa sat pressed against the window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold and red. She still had her waitress apron clutched in her lap, a ridiculous artifact from a life that had ended 20 minutes ago. "You're shaking," Nico said. He didn't move toward her, respecting the invisible wall she had built, but his voice filled the cabin. "I just lost my job," Tessa said, her voice brittle. "I just got fired, My ex-boyfriend was assaulted by your bodyguard, and now I'm being kidnapped." "Abducted is a strong word," Nico replied, calm, adjusting his cufflinks. "I prefer relocated for security purposes. And you didn't lose your job. You retired. There is a difference." "I can't just go with you, Nico. I have a life. I have a lease. I have a cat." Nico pressed a button on the intercom. "Luca, have a team go to the South Side apartment. Pack everything. Bring the cat." "Yes, boss." Luca's voice crackled from the front seat. Tessa turned to him, eyes wide. "You can't just order people around like that. That's breaking and entering." Nico finally turned to look at her. The streetlights outside cast rhythmic shadows across his sharp jawline. "Tessa, do you know who I am? I mean, do you really know?" She swallowed hard. "I know your name is Dominic Valenti. I know people whisper when you walk into a room. And I know you carry a gun in a suit that costs more than my education. I am the head of the Valenti Syndicate," he said, stating it as simply as if he were discussing the weather. "My family has run the Chicago underworld for 40 years. When we met at the gala, I was in the middle of a negotiation that determined who controls the ports from here to Gary, Indiana." Tessa felt the air leave her lungs. Hearing it out loud was different than suspecting it. She was sitting next to a kingpin. "And," Nico continued, his gaze dropping to her stomach, "that means the child you are carrying is not just a baby. He or she is a target, a leverage point, an heir." "Nobody knows," Tessa whispered. "I haven't told anyone." "Derek knows," Nico countered darkly. "And that loud-mouthed idiot screamed it across a crowded restaurant. By tomorrow morning, the Moretti family, the Bratva, and the FBI will know that Dominic Valenti has a weakness. You are not safe in that apartment, Tessa. You never were." The car slowed, turning into the private underground entrance of the Valenti spire, a glass needle piercing the skyline of the Gold Coast. "So what now?" Tessa asked, her voice trembling. "I'm your prisoner?" "No," Nico said, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek, warm and calloused. "You are my family, and Valentis protect their own." The elevator ride to the penthouse took 40 seconds. When the doors opened, Tessa stepped into a world of cold luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The furniture was modern, Italian, and looked uncomfortable. There were no pictures on the walls, only abstract art. It felt like a museum, not a home. "The guest wing is to the east," Nico gestured, "but you will sleep in the master suite with me." Tessa spun around. "Excuse me." "For safety," Nico said, his face unreadable. "The master suite has bulletproof glass and a reinforced panic room. The guest wing does not." "I'm not sleeping in your bed, Nico. We had one night, one mistake." Nico stepped closer, invading her personal space. The intensity coming off him was like a physical wave. "Was it a mistake? Because I remember you whispering my name. I remember you didn't want to leave in the morning." Tessa flushed. "That was before I knew you were a criminal." "I am a businessman with difficult competitors," Nico corrected. "Go. Shower. Change. There are clothes in the closet. Luca will bring your things within the hour. I have business to attend to." He turned and walked toward a heavy oak door, his office, leaving Tessa standing alone in the middle of the cavernous living room. She looked down at her stomach. "What have we gotten into?" she whispered to the baby. Inside his office, Nico poured himself a drink. His hand wasn't shaking, but his mind was racing. He picked up his secure phone and dialed. "It's me," Nico said. "Put a detail on Derek Salinger. I want to know every breath he takes." "Boss," the voice on the other end said. "We have a problem. Someone filmed the incident at the restaurant. It's on TikTok. It's got 1 million views already. The caption is, "Mob Boss destroys Rude X." Your face is clear as day. Nico closed his eyes and crushed the crystal glass in his hand. Shards dug into his palm, but he didn't feel the pain. The secret wasn't just out. It was viral. Derek Salinger sat in the waiting room of the emergency clinic, an ice pack pressed to his shoulder. The doctor said it was just a severe sprain, but Derek's ego was shattered beyond repair. He scrolled through his phone with his good hand. The video was everywhere. Comments mocked him. "Look at that loser crying. Waitress 1, douchebag 0. That guy in the suit is terrifying and hot." Derek threw his phone against the plastic chair next to him. "It's not fair," he muttered. "She's a nobody. She's fat and broke. How does she land a guy like that?" He needed payback. He needed to burn them both. But he knew he couldn't fight Nico physically. That bodyguard, the giant, would snap him like a twig. He needed leverage. His phone buzzed. It was his boss, Mr. Henderson, the CEO of Vanguard Logistics. "Salinger," Henderson barked. "I saw the video. You're embarrassing the company. Public intoxication, harassing a pregnant woman. You're on thin ice." "Mr. Henderson, wait. You don't understand," Derek pleaded. "That guy, the one who attacked me, do you know who that is?" "I don't care who. It's Dominic Valenti," Derek interrupted. "The guy who owns the construction firms we've been trying to outbid for the dock contracts." There was a silence on the line. Vanguard Logistics was a legitimate company on paper, but everyone in the industry knew they moved cargo for the Moretti family, the Valenti's bitter rivals. "Are you sure?" Henderson asked, his tone changing from angry to intrigued. "Positive, and guess what? The girl, the waitress, she's pregnant with his kid. He admitted it." Another long silence. Then a different voice came on the line, a voice that sounded like gravel in a blender. "Mr. Salinger," the new voice said. "This is Salvatore Moretti. I'm sitting here with your boss. Tell me, do you know where this girl is now?" Derek's heart hammered. He was talking to the Sal Moretti. This was dangerous. But then he remembered Tessa's face as she walked away, and Nico's condescending whisper. "I can find out," Derek said, a cruel smile forming on his lips. "I know her old apartment. I know her friends. I can flush her out." "You do that," Sal Moretti said. "You help us, and that promotion you were celebrating, consider it doubled. But if you lie to me, Derek, I'll have your tongue cut out." The line went dead. Derek sat back, adrenaline coursing through him. He wasn't just a victim anymore. He was a player. Meanwhile, at the penthouse, Tessa was discovering that being a mafia prisoner came with perks she hated to enjoy. She had woken up in a bed that felt like sleeping on a cloud. A chef had prepared a breakfast specifically designed for pregnancy: spinach frittata, ginger tea for nausea, and fresh fruit. Nico was gone. He had left a note. "Dr. Evans will be here at 10:15 a.m. Be ready." At 10 sort of sharp, the elevator opened. A stern-looking woman with greying hair and a medical bag walked in, followed by Luca. "Ms. Reynolds," Dr. Evans said briskly, "Mr. Valenti has retained me for your prenatal care. I have a portable ultrasound machine. He insists on daily monitoring for now due to your stress levels." Tessa sat on the sofa, pulling up her shirt. She felt exposed, vulnerable. "Is this necessary? I'm fine." "Nico takes no chances," Luca grunted from the doorway, his back turned to give them privacy. Dr. Evans applied the cold gel. She moved the wand over Tessa's belly. The screen flickered to life, and there, in the grainy black and white, was the rhythmic flutter. Whoosh, 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 the heartbeat. The elevator chimed again. Nico walked in, He looked exhausted, his suit jacket gone, his sleeves rolled up. He had been dealing with the fallout of the video all morning, cleaning up messes, paying off police captains. He stopped dead when he heard the sound. He walked over to the sofa, his eyes locked on the screen. He fell to his knees beside Tessa, ignoring his expensive trousers. "That is—" Nico's voice failed him. The ruthless Don looked like a boy. "That's your son," Dr. Evans said, pointing to a small shape. Or daughter. Too early to tell the gender for sure, but the heartbeat is strong. Nico reached out, his hand hovering over Tessa's stomach. He looked at her, asking for permission. Tessa felt her anger soften, just a fraction. She nodded. He placed his hand on the warm skin of her belly. "I made this," he whispered. "We made this," Tessa corrected softly. "And I'm still mad at you." Nico chuckled, a rare, genuine sound. "I know. But look at that heart. It's a fighter, like you." For a moment, the war outside didn't exist. There was only the three of them. Then, Nico's phone rang. He stood up instantly, the mask slamming back into place. He answered it, walked to the window, and listened. His posture stiffened. "When?" he asked sharply. "Okay, do not engage. Let him lead us to the handler." He hung up and turned to Tessa. The tenderness was gone, replaced by tactical coldness. "What is it?" Tessa asked, pulling her shirt down, fear spiking in her chest. "Your ex," Nico said. "He's at your old apartment. He's looking for you, and he's not alone. He has Moretti soldiers in a trailing car." "He's leading them to me?" Tessa gasped. "He thinks he is hunting," Nico said, walking to the wall and opening a hidden panel to reveal a row of firearms. He selected a black pistol and checked the chamber. "He doesn't realize he is the bait." "Nico, don't kill him," Tessa said, standing up. "He's an idiot, but he's not a killer. He has aligned himself with wolves, Tessa. If he stands in the way, he falls." Nico looked at Luca. "Stay with her. Nobody enters this penthouse unless they know the code. If the alarm trips, take her to the panic room." "Where are you going?" Tessa cried. "To send a message," Nico said. "I'm going to catch a rat." The Southside apartment building was a crumbling brick structure that smelled of old cabbage and damp carpet. Derek Salinger hated it. He stood in the hallway outside Tessa's door, a crowbar in his hand. "She's not here," Derek whispered into his Bluetooth earpiece. "The place looks cleaned out." "Go inside," Sal Moretti's voice commanded. "Check for anything. A diary, a laptop, an address." Derek jammed the crowbar into the doorframe and shoved. The wood splintered, and the door swung open. The apartment was empty. Not just empty, sanitized. The furniture was gone. The clothes were gone. Even the trash cans were empty. "It's a ghost town," Derek said, frustration rising. He moved her fast. "Check the floorboards. Check the vents," Sal ordered. As Derek rummaged through the empty apartment, he felt a strange sense of unease. It was too quiet. The street outside was empty. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut behind him. Derek spun around. Leaning against the door, casually examining his fingernails, was a man in a black trench coat. He had a scar running through his left eyebrow. "You're terrible at breaking and entering," the man said. "Who are you?" Derek stammered, raising the crowbar. "Get out of my way. I have protection." "You have nothing," the man said. He moved with blurring speed. Before Derek could swing, the man kicked his knee, shattering the joint. Derek screamed and collapsed to the floor. The man stepped on his hand, pinning the crowbar to the ground. "My boss wants a word," the man said. He tapped his earpiece. "Boss, I have the tourist." The door opened again. Nico walked in. He didn't look like the businessman from the restaurant anymore. He wore a black leather jacket, and his eyes were black pits of fury. He walked over to where Derek lay, writhing in pain. "I told you," Nico said softly, crouching down. "I told you that if you touched her life again, I would dismantle you." "I didn't touch her," Derek sobbed. "I was just looking. Sal made me do it." "Sal," Nico repeated. "Salvatore Moretti. So you admit you are working for my enemy." "I didn't know. He just wanted to know where she was. I swear." Nico stood up and walked to the window. He looked down at the street. 2 black sedans were idling down the block, Moretti's men, waiting for Derek to report in. "They are waiting for you, Derek," Nico said. "They are using you to flush me out. But they made a mistake. They sent a sheep to do a wolf's job." Nico pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. "Hit the cars," Nico ordered. Below on the street, chaos erupted. 2 delivery trucks that had been parked on the corners suddenly accelerated, slamming into the idling sedans, boxing them in. Armed men poured out of the trucks, Valenti soldiers. Gunfire erupted, short and controlled. Derek listened to the pops and crashes from the street, his face pale as death. "Oh God. Oh God." Nico turned back to Derek. "You have 2 choices, Derek. Choice A, I throw you out that window, and you tell the pavement what you know." Derek shook his head frantically. "Choice B," Nico continued. "You go back to your boss at Vanguard. You go back to Sal, and you tell them exactly what I tell you to say. You become my rat." "I'll do it. I'll do anything," Derek cried. Nico grabbed Derek by the collar and hauled him up, ignoring the man's broken knee. "You will tell Sal that Tessa left town. You will tell him she went to her mother's in Ohio. You will lead them away from Chicago." "Yes. Yes, Ohio. I'll tell them." "And Derek?" Nico leaned in close. "If you fail, I won't kill you. I will ensure you spend the rest of your life in a prison cell, wondering which day my men on the inside will finally get to you. Do we have an agreement?" "Yes." Nico dropped him. "Get him a crutch. Get him out the back way." Nico's men dragged Derek away. Nico stood alone in the empty apartment. He could smell Tessa's perfume, faint but lingering in the air. His phone buzzed. It was Luca, back at the penthouse. "Boss," Luca said, his voice urgent. "We have a situation." "Did they breach the perimeter?" Nico asked, already moving toward the door. "No, it's Tessa. She found the dossier on the desk, the one about her father." Nico froze. Tessa didn't know about her father. She thought he had died in a car accident 20 years ago. She didn't know that her father was the former accountant for the Valenti family, and that he had been executed for stealing. "Don't let her leave," Nico ordered, breaking into a run. "I'm coming." Nico cursed under his breath. The war with Moretti was one thing, but the war for Tessa's trust, that was a battle he was terrified he had already lost. He sprinted down the stairs, his heart racing faster than it ever had in a gunfight. If she found out who killed her father, the baby wouldn't be enough to keep her. She would burn his world down from the inside. The dossier was heavy in Tessa's hands, though it consisted of only a few sheets of paper. It felt dense, like lead, pulling her arms down towards the floor. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, the Chicago skyline glittered like a sea of diamonds. But inside, the air had turned stagnant and cold. She stared at the words, stamped in red ink, the letters blurring as her eyes refused to focus. Target, Arthur Reynolds. Status, terminated. Cause, theft of family assets. Embezzlement. Authorized by Lucio Valenti. The name Valenti seemed to burn off the page. Tessa forced herself to look at the photo clipped to the file. It was a grainy surveillance shot, but the face was unmistakable. It was her father. She remembered him not as a criminal, but as a gentle, quiet man who smelled of pipe tobacco and old library books. a man who would read her stories until his voice went hoarse, a man who had died in what the police called a tragic highway accident on a rainy Tuesday 12 years ago. She had mourned him for over a decade. She had visited a grave that held a lie. She hadn't mourned an embezzler. She hadn't mourned a man executed by the Mafia. The elevator doors at the far end of the room slid open with a soft hiss, breaking the silence. Nico stood there. For the first time since she had met him, the polished, impenetrable armor of the Don was gone. His chest heaved slightly, sweat glistening on his forehead, his tie loosened as if he had been tearing at it while he ran. He looked at the file in her hands, then up at her face, and he froze. The predator had become the prey. "Tessa," he said, his voice ragged, stripped of its usual command. Tessa didn't scream. She didn't throw the file. She felt a cold numbness spreading through her veins, freezing her heart. "You killed him," she whispered. The accusation hung in the vast room, heavier than the furniture, sharper than the glass. "Your family. You killed my dad." Nico took a step forward, his hands raised, palms open in a gesture of total surrender. "My father did," he corrected, the words coming out in a rush. "I was 16, Tessa. I was at boarding school in Switzerland. I didn't know the names in the ledgers. I didn't know who Arthur Reynolds was. But you know now," she said, her voice rising, cracking under the weight of the betrayal. She took a step back, putting the sofa between them. "You knew the night we met? Or did you find out later? Did you find out when you had your goons stalk me and dig through my life?" "I found out when I ran the background check after the gala," Nico admitted. He didn't try to hide it. He walked slowly toward her, not like a man approaching an enemy, but like a man approaching a ledge. "I saw the name Reynolds. It triggered a flag in the archives. I went down to the vault myself. I pulled the ledger." "So I'm what to you?" Tessa laughed, a bitter, jagged sound that hurt her throat. "Penance? You felt guilty about the orphan you created, so you slept with her? Or maybe it was a power trip. You wanted to own the daughter of the man you owned?" "No!" Nico roared the word. The sound was so powerful it seemed to shake the reinforced glass walls. It wasn't anger, it was desperation. "It has nothing to do with guilt." Nico's eyes were wild, pleading. "It has everything to do with you. I fell for you before I knew the name. The name terrified me because I knew this moment would come." He stopped just feet from her, the coffee table the only barrier left. He looked at the file in her hand as if it were a bomb. "Tessa, look at the last page." "I don't want to read any more lies," she spat, making a move to drop the folder. "Read the last page," Nico pleaded, his voice cracking. "Please, if you leave after that, I won't stop you. But you have to see the truth." Tessa hesitated. Her hands were trembling so badly the papers rustled like dry leaves. She flipped the folder to the back. There was a single sheet of yellowed notepad paper. The handwriting was familiar, looping, slanted and shaky. It wasn't the calligraphy of a Valenti. It was the handwriting she used to see on her birthday cards. "To Lucio Valenti, I am sorry. I had no choice. Salvatore Moretti has my wife. He has threatened my little girl, Tessa. He told me if I didn't funnel the accounts to him, he would take them from me. I took the money to pay him off. Please don't hurt my family. I will accept whatever punishment you have. Just keep Tessa safe. She is innocent." Tessa gasped, the air leaving her lungs in a sharp rush. The room spun. She had to grip the edge of the table to keep from falling. He was being blackmailed?" she whispered. "By Salvatore Moretti," Nico confirmed, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "Moretti squeezed your father. He used your mother's illness and your safety as leverage. He forced a good man to steal from the Valentis to save his child. Nico reached out, moving slowly, and gently took the file from her frozen fingers. He tossed it onto the table, dismissing the past to focus on the present. My father, Lucio, didn't see the note until it was too late, Nico explained, his eyes locked on hers. The execution order had already been carried out. My father died with that regret eating him alive. He told me on his deathbed that he had killed a loyal man because of Moretti's games. When I met you, when I realized who you were, it wasn't pity, Tessa. It was fate. It was the universe giving me a chance to balance the scales. Tessa looked at him. The monster she had imagined seconds ago dissolved. In his place stood a man who carried the sins of his father, a man who had been trying to protect her from a truth that would shatter her world. Her father hadn't been a criminal. He had been a martyr. He had died to keep her safe from the wolves, and the man who really killed him wasn't the Valenti family. It was Moretti, the same man currently hunting her unborn child, the same man who had sent Derek to destroy her. The clarity was sudden and absolute. It burned away the fear. Sal Moretti, Tessa whispered, the name tasting like ash. He did this. He destroyed my family. Yes, Nico said. He stepped around the table and took her hands. His grip was warm, solid, an anchor in the storm. And right now, thanks to your ex-boyfriend, Moretti is chasing a ghost in Ohio. His guard is down. His soldiers are scattered. He thinks he has won. Nico's eyes hardened into diamonds, cold, sharp, and unbreakable. I can end this, Tessa. Tonight. I can finish what my father should have done 20 years ago. But I need to know that you are with me. I need to know that you can forgive the name Valenti. Tessa looked down at her stomach, where their son lay safe and warm. Then she looked up at the man who would burn the world to keep them safe. She realized that the timid waitress who let men like Derek walk all over her was gone. That woman had died in the bistro. In her place was a woman who carried the blood of a martyr and the air of a king. She squeezed Nico's hands back. End him, she said softly. Nico kissed her forehead. It was a promise, a vow, and a declaration of war. He reached up and tapped his earpiece. Luca, he barked, his voice turning to steel. Initiate Protocol 0. The war didn't last long. It wasn't a sprawling battle of gunfights in the streets. It was a surgical excision of a cancer. While Moretti's main strike force was kicking down the doors of an empty farmhouse in Cleveland, Ohio, following Derek's desperate false tip, Nico struck the snake's head in Chicago. He didn't use bullets. He used the one thing Moretti couldn't fight: total exposure. Protocol 0 was the nuclear option. Nico released decades of evidence regarding Moretti's racketeering to the FBI, files his father had hoarded for insurance. Simultaneously, Valenti soldiers seized control of the docks, welding Moretti's shipping containers shut and handing the keys to federal agents. Salvatore Moretti was arrested on the tarmac of O'Hare Airport, trying to board a private jet to the Caymans. He was dragged away in handcuffs, screaming threats that no one listened to anymore. His empire crumbled in 48 hours, dismantled brick by brick. As for Derek Salinger, he didn't go to prison, though there were nights he wished he had. Nico kept his promise. He didn't kill him. Instead, he ensured Derek was blacklisted from every corporate job in the state. His reputation was incinerated. The last anyone saw of the man who had mocked Tessa for being fat and lazy, he was wearing a neon vest, scrubbing graffiti off a warehouse wall in the freezing Chicago rain. He was working minimum wage for a cleaning crew owned, ironically, by a shell company of the Valenti Group. Every dollar he earned, Nico signed the check. It was a poetic, slow-burning misery. 5 months later. The private wing of Northwestern Memorial Hospital didn't smell like a hospital. It smelled of a garden in full bloom. Every surface was covered in flowers. White lilies, red roses, blue hydrangeas, and orchids of every color overflowed from vases on the windowsills, the tables, and even the floor. Tessa lay in the bed, exhausted, her hair messy, her makeup gone. But she had never looked more radiant. In her arms was a bundle wrapped in blue silk, no bigger than a loaf of bread. Leo Arthur Valenti. The door clicked open, and Nico walked in. He looked different. The lines of tension that had defined his face for months had softened. He wasn't just a Don today. He was a father. He walked to the bedside as if approaching a holy shrine. He sat on the edge of the mattress, reaching out a finger to stroke the baby's impossibly soft cheek. Leo stirred, his tiny hand instinctively gripping Nico's finger. "He looks like you," Nico said, his voice thick with emotion. "He has your nose." Tessa smiled, tired but happy. "And your frown. He's already stubborn." Nico chuckled, a warm, genuine sound that filled the room. "He is a Valenti. Stubbornness is his inheritance." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black velvet box. He held it for a moment, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I've been waiting for this moment, since the night you left my hotel room." "Nico, you don't have to." "I do," he interrupted gently. He opened the box. Inside sat a ring that seemed to capture the light of the room. It was a yellow diamond, rare and flawless, surrounded by a halo of smaller white stones. It was heavy, ancient, and beautiful. "You are the mother of my son," Nico said, his eyes searching hers. "You are the only person who ever saw the man behind the suit. You saved me from my father's sins. Marry me, Tessa." Tessa looked at the ring, then down at the sleeping baby, and finally at Nico. "People will talk," she teased softly, tears pricking her eyes. "They'll say I only married you for the money. They'll say the waitress trapped the billionaire." Nico leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. "Let them talk," he whispered fiercely. "We are the kings and queens of this city now, and lions do not lose sleep over the opinions of sheep." Tessa smiled, the tears finally spilling over. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Nico slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her hand alone. "By the way," Nico said, a mischievous glint returning to his eye as he stood up to adjust the baby's blanket. "I saw the doctor's chart on the way in. You've already lost 20 pounds since the birth." Tessa laughed, grabbing a pillow with her free hand and feigning a throw. "Don't you start, Dominic Valenti." "I'm just saying," Nico grinned, dodging the imaginary projectile and leaning back in to kiss her, deep and slow. "You look beautiful. You always did. Even when you were fat with my son." The baby let out a small, sharp cry, demanding attention. The two most dangerous people in Chicago fell silent, smiling at each other, ready to face the world they had conquered together. And that is how a cruel insult in a restaurant backfired into a mafia war. Derek wanted to shame Tessa for her body, to make her feel small so he could feel big. But instead, he pushed her into the arms of the only man powerful enough to give her the world. It's a reminder that sometimes the things that are meant to break us are actually the things that save us. Karma doesn't always come instantly, but when it arrives, it hits hard. Tessa went from serving tables to ruling the city, proving that true worth isn't about a waistline, it's about the spine. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, romance, and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What do you think? Did Derek get off too easy with just a minimum wage job, or was a lifetime of humiliation enough punishment? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next dramatic story. Thanks for watching.